living room with Stephanie. And if you notice, I have some handsome young men here. We were speaking earlier, and we're looking at their perspective of what Christmas is, and maybe why they don't go to church. And I love what they said. And I thought, well, while they're here, I might as well record them. And this is what we're doing now. So we know that many people celebrate Christmas December 25th of every year. And we also understand that that is not the day when Christ was born, but it has been adapted by the Romans as a day to exchange gifts. And the history is really long, but let me hear what they have to say about Christmas. I have here as my guests Andre, Corey, and Ted Roy. Welcome to In the Living Room.
Thank you for having me.
Handsome young men.
Us.
Now, I know that you kind of believe in Christmas somewhat.
Yes.
Why do you celebrate Christmas, Andre?
Well, I was raised by my parents that made it very important to celebrate. I know it's not technically Jesus' birthday, but that's the day we used to celebrate Jesus' birthday. I believe in God, and Jesus is his son. Jesus was the only human form that we could use as an example that he lived like us as men on the earth, and he was not pure. We all sin, and he actually died on the cross for our sins. So we pay homage to him as his birth, and the fact that we could trace his birthday back to Bethlehem. Even the other day, I seen on YouTube people go and visit the historical sites where he was born, and it's very important to feel that as a human being we could relate to his existence here on earth, whereas God, he's a higher power, his father, whereas something we can't really fully relate to him. So we use the time now to celebrate Jesus' birthday, and I feel like as having two kids of my own, we take the time to shed light and pass down these memorable experience, and we want our kids to do the same thing and take on the same example that we had for ourselves.
That's extremely profound. I think that's what most of us try to do as parents. And Mr. Corey. Corey, what do you think about Christmas? I heard you saying that, about gifts. You were talking primarily about gifts.
I believe in the spirit of Christmas. I don't believe in Santa. I don't believe in the Easter Bunny. I don't believe fairy tales. I don't believe in giving somebody else credit to your child when you've worked very hard to get where you're at, to make that money, especially being a black person. I just feel like to give someone else credit for your hard-earned money, your hard-earned gifts, is kind of a slap in the face to yourself. But then again, Christmas, I believe Christmas is for everybody, but truly for the kids. I don't want to ruin a kid's hope or a kid's dreams, or I think they have to find out naturally that these things are, it's your parents getting you the gifts. You know what I mean? Because some, especially now, from the dawn of time, you're not always going to have great experiences with your kids, so throughout that year, you've probably been cussed out from your child and this and that, but at the end of the day, you still love your child. So, meanwhile, Santa did nothing and sat up in the North Pole and basically just waited for this one day to come around to everyone's chimneys. But the issue I have is, especially growing up in an apartment for some part of my childhood, it didn't take long for me to figure out that Santa can't come down the roof or come down the chimney because there's no chimneys. They may have one in the building, which is the one, but that goes to the boiler room or wherever it goes to, so we don't have access to that. And I know a lot of people have in the apartments like 3-bolt doors, and just like there's no way he's getting through that door, coming through that balcony. There's no way. Like, we're all gonna hear it. So, like, if you've grown up in a house your whole life, yes, it's a lot easier to believe that Santa, because you know you might believe the whole chimney, and if you have a chimney, but ask any kid from the apartment, they're gonna tell you off the bat from an early age they understood that that's not how it worked. And
I love that explanation. You have been reasoning from you were born.
From the kid,
you were born.
you have to. I have to, you know. So I knew every gift came from my parents, which makes me love them more. You know. It is what it is. Everyone is different. I feel like it just takes time for people to realize that it was your parents or your guardian or whoever gave you that gift, believing it was Santa. You know, having you believe it was Santa.
Yes.
It was never Santa. It was that person, you know.
Yes.
So.
And Ted Roy, I know your perspective about the whole thing might be a little more psychological, sociological, and you have a different perspective. What's your perspective?
He wanted say something there. Sorry. What were you gonna say just now?
No, I was just gonna
forget.
I was just gonna say I like how Corey mentioned that our parents may go through some trials and tribulations with us as kids. We're not perfect growing up.
Of course not.
Right, but the fact that they could show us how much they love us. It's not about the materialistic things, but that's a way of them showing, and we shouldn't give credit to someone else that's not real. So I definitely like how you broke that down. That's what I was gonna say to you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes. And Ted Roy?
Yeah, very interesting perspectives. But I appreciate you inviting me into this atmosphere to discuss such topics, even though I may not have necessary general sense to add into the input of others. But if I may lend my input, I remember early beginnings, and it's a very fruitful imagination to believe in such a clause, so Saint Nick or whatever you want to call it, or Spirit of Christ, as to wherever it derives from the history of these terms, Xmas, Christmas, or Saint Nick, as to what we're actually discussing, as to the spirit and essence. And then we're maybe probably in the breeze or in the wind of the snow path as to which date we're really falling on, whether it be December 24th or 5th or 6th or January 1st, as to what day Jesus may be born. Hypothetically, we don't really know any which way. But any which way, the spirit of giving is a very good idea, definitely, whoever may practice it. I remember from young, whether a belief system that may have developed through ideologies, gift giving or thanks, or I remember my earlier days of the reindeer and all these different magical belief systems, as my friend was suggesting, as to how Santa Claus went down the chimney. And I remember my escapades very young as to me and my black bag, as to what I'm doing in the community. You see what I'm saying? I was doing justice, and I'm delivering presents, to whoever needs it. In my little, however I am, you understand? But I mean,
were you delivering gifts at the small
this
age?
could be a Good Friday. We don't know what story we're really telling, but this story happens all the time where some people are trying to give back and they're not really getting credit for me being in the soup kitchen or what I'm doing for the community, you understand?
Yes.
As Saint Nick with a little Christmas hat on my head. You understand? For celebrating the season or what I do, thanks.
Yes.
For the other people, understand? Communities. So I could be looked at as Saint Nick myself, you understand? It's gifts thanks to myself, or give thanks to Jesus, or whoever it is as to give me this idea of pay it forward, as you sense, and see if if somebody gives back. There's one of those things as to who's given and who's taken. Maybe a prior pagan holiday, like say Halloween and trick or treat, as to who's given or taken. It's the same thing. The idea of gift giving, and as to what energy you may create under a church setting, the house of God, or even still spreading, that the ideology of it's better to give thanks. You know, doesn't matter which time you could do. Your philanthropy any time of the year. It doesn't matter on this date particularly when you do your thing.
Yeah. So basically, you don't believe in Christmas at all. You don't believe in it at all, right?
No, I'm just saying you could give thanks in a lot of different ways how you show your appreciation as to.
But you're not religious. You're not Christian then. You weren't brought up Christian, right?
That's good.
Catholic, yes.
You're brought up as a
I know
Catholic.
a lot of different, but I mean like Christian settings, Catholic settings, all different forms of houses of gods and different disciplines.
So at what age did you discover that all of this wasn't real, and you decided to be who you are?
I was born. Well, I'm not gonna say I was born out here, but I mean, it's a West Indian tradition may be a little different than Western traditions versus Eastern traditions and all that as to where you're coming from to see the perspective as to what we do around this celebration as a culture. Right. So every culture experiences the tradition differently as to what we're doing.
Yeah, that's true. Corey,
Hi.
at what point were you brought up Christian? You went to church as a little kid?
I am Christian. Somewhat, not really. That was more of my grandmother. We attended occasionally, certain times. For a while, my grandmother tried to get us to go, but I think that created a lot of conflict. Just within her siblings, so my mother and. Because it just wasn't their thing, not to say that they don't believe, but
it wasn't their thing to go.
Yeah, like we're not there every Sunday or, I mean, I knew from a young age, certain things just did not make sense. Certain things was out of my hands. Certain things was out of my reach. As a kid, I learned that a lot of things didn't make sense. A lot of things, was out of my reach.
Like what so? Didn't make sense, and what was out of your reach?
I grew up an only child.
Oh, you're an only child.
I have a sister, but she's
much older or younger?
No, she's younger. So she's 12 years younger. So a lot of my childhood that I recall,
you were like an only child.
Only a child because, within that time frame, we've moved about 3 or 4 times.
Yes.
So I remember all of that. Yeah. My grandmother, she attended church on a regular. She eventually stopped. She got older. Her reasoning was, I don't know, this is one thing she told me that I remember was she felt like everyone, in the congregation, everyone there was kind of like judging her based on certain things, like she had jewelry and like she had like she looked nice, she always looked beautiful, she always looked nice. And I don't know, I guess after a while, just she had issues and she eventually stopped going. But when she was going strong, she tried to get us to go more. But fortunately, my family's big. I have a lot of cousins. It's kind of impossible. Every child is different. So,
not to cut you off, this kind of experience you're referring to happened to me as well.
Yes.
But it was back in the day. I remember vividly when I got my ears pierced. This is probably 2002. This is when jewelry was a big deal. So I can imagine when, I don't know if you're referring to the 90s or around the same time frame, but in the church it was a big deal. And I remember coming to church with my headband on because I didn't want anybody to see me. And somebody still seen the little shiny thing and told my mom and dad, and it was a big thing in the church. To fast forward to now, it's not a big deal to have jewelry. So not to segue this conversation, but this is the reasons why I think a lot of people started leaving the church, because there's a lot of contradictions.
Yes.
Versus back in the day to now. Things that they were not okay with back in the day, they are now. And they lost a lot of people. So it's like, did they lose a lot of people because they're contradicting? And could they have saved a lot of people if they were able to look past your appearance? Because in the Bible it says, come as you are. If I don't know the exact scripture right now, but I did grow up in church. So if God says, come as you are, and you're, as Corey said, his grandmother felt a way coming in her Sunday best. Her Sunday best could be different than somebody else's Sunday best, or
Yes.
Saturday best, whatever day you choose to observe the Sabbath or attend church. So I feel like this is why we lose a lot of youth in our churches, because there's no standard that we could uphold for a certain amount of time or an entirety, you know what I mean, where we don't have to flip flop. We hold each other standard throughout the whole time, you know.
Yes. I'm somewhat, it's good to hear that perspective, because I wonder too why we have so many different denominations, so many different churches. And I think if we were going to this church and that church and that church, and we were hearing the same kind of requirements, you would see more young people coming to church. I think too, because I see that this church may not want you to wear jewelry, and that church might say it's okay to wear jewelry. And so, you can wear pants in some churches and you can wear pants in some other churches. So it kind of brings some kind of confusion to the young person. And I think I've seen, for example, where some young people walk into some churches in pants, and some people are asking them questions about that, or or jewelry or whatever. So I think, so you don't know what's the requirement for going to a particular church, right?
Right. And it pushes them away.
It pushes them away.
I feel like there's just a disconnect with religion, period. That's why I don't like talking about religion. I don't like talking about politics. Everyone has their own opinion. Everyone thinks differently. Thing is, we don't know. We could sit there and we could talk about the Bible, but we don't really know if the Bible is 100% true, because how many times has the Bible been rewritten? So I could say, I like to see the original by the first scriptures. No, that doesn't exist. Like, no one has that. So not to, and based on the history of man, is evil. And I believe there's some parts of the Bible that either aren't real, was rewritten by someone, so history that was deleted, and it just been rewritten because they don't want certain things to get out.
And also, it was used for slavery. Go back to our ancestors as a control mechanism, right?
Of course.
Right? To control us, to obey their master, things of these nature. So it's like psychological as well, right? So we don't know if somebody put in certain passages for those reasons.
For those reasons. We don't know. Like, it's been rewritten so many times. Certain things, I know for me, certain things don't make sense. And I've asked many people, who go to church or are more religious, or more spiritual, I guess you could say. And I've heard all different answers, all different reasonings. So to me, that shows it's everyone has a different opinion on, their version of, I'll call it high spirituality. You can call it Christian, you call it Catholic, but you start looking into other religions and the rules change, because some religions, they have more than one God, and now we're confused. How does that work? So they don't follow. So to me, it seems like a certain religions don't follow the same, the same formula or the same scripture, So it's almost like everyone's version of what has happened from the dawn of time is different. So,
Right.
you know, I am Christian. I'm not the most religious. A lot of things don't make sense. You know, the picture, the average picture that they show of Jesus, I know, based on the average look from those days, that they just can't be. There's blue eyes, nice hair, it just can't be. There's no way. So yet again, I feel like that part was rewritten from someone else. You know what I mean? Because to my knowledge, then most people would have been more of a darker tan. He was, he's pale. Like, I don't want to expand on that, but
Yes.
and then you hear about black Jesus, right? So who's to know? Who's to even say Jesus was black? I mean, who's to even know? And then you hear about, okay, Jesus is God's son, but then Jesus is God. It gets very confusing for me. I feel like from my past experiences, when I do go to church, I do feel a little bit judged, to be honest. I do. It's almost like everyone knows you're the fresh meat.
That's a good point.
Never seen this guy before.
They single you out, stand up, big hand up.
And now the pastor wants to talk about your problem, and my problem is deep. I don't really want to spread. That's not information I could really give to. If you want to have a one-on-one, sure, but I don't like how we approach that.
For everybody.
And now I don't really want to come back because I don't like to be put on the spot.
Right.
You feel what I'm saying?
Right.
Just let me come. Let me take in what I'm supposed to take in. Maybe I'll have a change of thought. Maybe I'll come next week. Maybe next week we can retry this.
100%.
But if you do it the first time, it's just like anything, it's gonna scare me off.
Scare you away.
If I'm already vulnerable and I don't really do this.
And it makes you think of their intentions. Is the pastor putting you on the spot to make him seem like he's the savior now and he could save you in front of everybody, use it as an example to have his followers continue to come in because you did that great deed of bringing somebody new in?
Ooh.
Or is it really doing this because he really wants you to meet God? You know what I mean? And you try to look at their intentions. Because at the end of the day, look at the church. The church is run off of historically the state and the church go hand in hand. What does that mean? The church is a business.
It has to be, though. Of course it is.
Right?
You got the whole infamous. You got the whole topic about the whole like the whole church fund, the passing around the basket. I mean, everyone knows. I mean, it's been talked about many of times.
The pastor living large.
Well, some people, I've heard stories. I've heard people attending the same church for many, many years, and every time they go, they put money in a basket, but there's never an upgrade on the building. But yeah, here comes the pastor in a brand new, beautiful car, and now you're like, okay.
Big house.
You hear about it. You hear about the big congregations on TV. Not all of them. I'm not saying all of them, but I mean, it's just very confusing. I mean, the Pope is even. I mean, what a couple of years ago, the Pope did some weird stuff to a little child, and everyone was just very confused. But he's a Pope, so they let it go. So it just gets very confusing. You know what I mean? So
it's very a biased system.
Yeah. So what are the rules? But then again, we look at religion as if it's all positive. I mean, the history of religion is very dark. Every religion is very dark. They had to be dark to get to where they're at now. But that's another conversation. That's a whole, goes deep into everything. That's a whole other conversation. But there's not one religion I know that just had a beautiful path. No one got killed. No one got slaughtered. No one got judged. No one got
taken advantage of.
Correct. And this is where I believe, the rewritten Bible and, I don't think that, like the King James version. I don't know what the version means. I think this should only be just the King James. How's their version? There's different versions.
You know what that means? Interpretation, change it up, variations.
Correct. Very confusing. Very confusing. But, as I do believe there is, a higher power. I just don't know if it's what's been told to us. I think at this point, just like anything, we have to do our own thinking. We have to start thinking logic because, sometimes, a lot of times, bad people get blessed, and you're very confused.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, how? You know, they just keep getting blessed, and you know they're the worst type of human being.
Right.
And then you are the best. You know, your mother, your parents, or your cousin, or your family, or your friends, the best human being, and
they suffer.
They suffer, or you know, so it
questioning God.
Correct. Mm-hmm. You know, obviously, when something good happens, you're like, okay, I'm blessed. Thanks. You know, He blessed me. Thank you. You know, but when the hard times come, you could only pray. But when that hard time comes, it's very hard to. There's going to be some part of you that's going to believe it, because you're going to be very confused on why did this happen to me. How did this happen to me?